We are Fandom Roulette.
Two nerds with a passion for
History,
video games,
tabletop games,
and, well, really any nerdy stuff that comes into our lives.
While we might not be able to name every ship classification in Star Wars,
Or every Pokemon.
or every spell in the player's handbook,
Well, one of us can.
we're still here to have a good time. Hey everyone, welcome to Fandom Roulette. I'm Joe.
And I'm Cody.
And on Fandom Roulette, this is a podcast where we talk about a myriad of nerdy things, including history, video games, tabletop role-playing games, and any other nerdy things that we want to talk about. Hey Cody, what nerdy stuff have you been up to recently, my bud?
Well, we did a session last week, which is probably for in our new format will always be what I'm up to lately. Yeah, but we had a really good we had a fun combat session where I made completely from scratch monsters. Well, I say completely from scratch. I took a couple things and I used some bases, but they ended up, after Frankensteining all this stuff together and making it all kind of balance itself out, they were truly unique monsters by the end of it that I was really proud of. And from what I had heard from the last session, you guys enjoyed it. So I'll probably talk about that on the campaign diary. But beyond that, I've been playing Breath of the Wild again in kind of that anticipation for Link's Awakening that comes out in September. I'm super excited about that.
Still holding up?
Oh, yeah. I mean, I haven't played it since it came out, which is what, 2-3 years now?
2-ish, yeah, something like that.
Something like that. And yeah, there's still things that I'm like finding now. I also picked up like the DLC for the Master Quest, and like there's like a gauntlet that you can run where you have to basically, like, you start off with nothing and you have to like pick stuff up through each wave as you kill things to get to the next zone and so on and so forth. And I'm excited to try that. I completed the first Divine Beast, but I've been dicking around mostly. I've just been exploring the world because it's so much fun to just like go to a place and like find stuff there without having to be like prompted with like anything. Sure. It's been fun. But other than that, just prepping for this. What about you?
A couple of things. Two that will be brief, and then one that's going to be a little bit longer. So I played a new tabletop role-playing game over the weekend, which was a lot of fun.
What did you play?
It's called Worldwide Wrestling.
Oh my gosh, yes. I love that one.
Have you played it?
I've watched people play it.
Okay.
It was I watched basically it was some people online's version of that show Glow.
Okay. Cool.
So it was like a female wrestling organization, and like they were just kind of going through the drama and like the excitement of that, which was really cool. But I had heard of this, and there's some really cool mechanics that I like.
Yeah.
But yeah,
I was very fond of the momentum mechanic.
Yeah.
Which for the folks at home, basically anytime you like successfully did a wrestling move, you got the choice to like build heat with the wrestler you were fighting or gain momentum. And basically momentum could be used to change a role from one system to the other. So it was an apocalypse system, which we talked about pretty extensively. So if you rolled like an 8 and you had 3 momentum, you could spend 2 momentum to make it a complete success. And then basically when you run out of momentum, you run the match is over. And you win or lose depending on what creative tells you. But there's like other things too, like as any game, it can go wrong in here and there. And then the other thing was that I've started reading some old school comics, like Peter David's X Factor, which is like a noir-y X-Man comic, which is pretty fun.
Nice.
But the big thing is this weekend was San Diego Comic-Con. Yeah! So yeah, I mean, I know like what people say that like Comic-Con has kind of become like a almost more like a pop culture con. Um, that's kind of like hard to keep up with in a lot of ways. And like this was actually kind of a bizarre year for Comic-Con, which like I'll get into in my little thoughts about it. And please feel free, Cody, to jump in at any point with any of your own thoughts of any of these things wet your whistle or tickle your fancy. So I'm going to start off with Star Trek. Star Trek got its own panel. They're doing a Disco season 3. But the thing is, I never finished season 2, so like, meh. But the thing that's more exciting is that they dropped the first trailer for the Picard TV show.
Does it look good? I haven't seen it.
I'm like pretty optimistic for it.
Cool.
It hit a lot of nostalgia bait-y things for me that like got me pretty intrigued. It seems like there's a mystery about the Borg.
Okay.
And like, you know, it was a nice combination of new characters and like classic Picard stuff. Like, you know, it starts off with him on like at his like vineyard, like just making wine and talking about how he's like sad and lonely now. And then it's like, because you gotta go on a space adventure, Picard.
Well, yeah, duh, obvi.
Yeah. So HBO had a couple of things. The first one is the Watchmen TV show. So like, I don't know. Over the years, my opinion of Watchmen is kind of soured, just because like I like my superhero stuff to kind of be like escapist and fun.
Sure.
But this is an intriguing take, which is that it's following the world that occurs after the end of the comic, not the movie, but the comic, where like Ozymandias has like squidded the world. And it has
classic,
right? Yeah, pretty traditional sci-fi trope stuff. So like, but there are some cool images. So like, there's a whole gang that is like wearing Rorschach masks, and like has like Rorschach's philosophy. The police officers seem to be wearing like yellow masks that kind of look like the comedian's button. And then, you know, like a handful of superheroes who seem like they're legitimately good, but like flawed, because that's what Watchmen is.
Yeah.
The other one is His Dark Materials, which is a book series that I read as a kid that I admittedly don't remember a lot about, except that there was a movie that came out called The Golden Compass that was bad.
I heard that was a super whiff.
Yeah. So here's the thing: is that movie has one of the best assembled casts of all time, and so the fact that it like whiffed so hard is kind of a shame.
That is a bummer.
But like, there's a couple of cool things about it. Like, the daemons are like puppets. So like, as a practical effects nerd, that was pretty cool to hear. I'm curious to see if it's going to be like as explicitly atheist as the books. Because for those of you who don't know, His Dark Materials was written by a guy who basically like read the Chronicles of Narnia and was like, well, if there's like a big old fantasy Christian allegory, I'm going to make a big old fantasy atheist allegory. So, meh.
Yeah.
I'm curious. Netflix dropped a couple of trailers. The one was for The Witcher.
I did see that.
What do you think?
I am skeptically optimistic.
I feel it.
I'm so split. So they're playing into the books, because the video games are not only kind of like a big RPG mess with like lots of like weaving tales and things like that, and that would be, in my personal opinion, that would be a very difficult to almost impossible to like recreate in a way that pleases everybody.
Yeah.
And then secondly, so for me, The Witcher is about going around and slaying monsters. Like, he's a monster hunter for the sole purpose of slaying like he was bred to slay monsters. Like, that's why he has white hair. That's why he's super strong and can drink basically poison to most people, but like enhancing, augmenting potions to him. He can cast mild spells, and I saw very little of that. Like, I know there are, like, magic is here and there are monsters, as you know, as we saw at the very end, which fuck that. I don't want to fight that. I don't want to. It's awful.
That's why Geralt's here, dude.
Yeah. So again, optimistic. I'm hoping that, you know, because Witcher 3 was really good. It like, I think it still holds up in my brain as like one of my, like, it's in my top 5. It's a fantastic game. There was like a really great story there, and I'm hoping that they can pull off some cool stuff with that.
Yeah.
But again, I saw a lot of like interactions with like knights and nobles, and just a lot of like, you know, like, I hope that they can keep me interested by making the people that they kind of focused on interesting. You know what I mean? Because like, for me, like, almost immediately I'm like, I don't give a fuck about these other people. I want to hear about, like, you know, the characters from like the books in the game and stuff like that. So who knows? I'm gonna keep an open mind, but the fact that the trailer did very little to show off Geralt and like the things that he does was kind of worrisome.
Okay. Hey, you know what? As a non-reader / non, I mean, I'm along the same lines, but I always give a show at least 2 episodes. That's like my philosophy. So
yeah, and I'm usually pretty, like, nowadays I'm more open to it. I'm, again, like I said, I'm skeptically optimistic. I really want this to go well. Just so that we can at least see 3 seasons of it, because that seems to be Netflix's like hard deadline, unless it's like a cult classic. So
yeah, the Netflix model.
Yeah.
There was a new trailer for the Dark Crystal show that looks really cool.
I'll be honest, and I'm sure this will either shock or awe some people. I didn't grow up with Dark Crystal. I have literally no idea what it is.
Well, the first one's on Netflix. I recommend it.
Okay.
And I think it's okay. So I'm just gonna throw this one out there. I think that when we lost Jim Henson, we lost so much cool original fantasy, and that like breaks my heart, because he built this whole world and it's all done using puppets, and like sometimes you forget you're watching puppets. Like, it's kind of amazing.
Damn, that sounds rad.
Yeah. And like the voice cast for this thing is like so crazy. Like, it has Jason Isaacs and Mark Hamill and Keegan-Michael Key and Benedict Wong and Helena Bonham Carter and like Alicia Vikander and all these like really talented actors. Like, I could go on and on, but that list is huge and I don't want to spend too much more time.
Sure.
So here's like a nerdy thing, and this is like a nerdy little like nerd boy like puppet nerd complaint. Is that I don't think they're doing their own puppetry, which is like sad for me.
Yeah, I get that. I miss the days of more practical effects, but
well, okay, so they're gonna be puppets, right?
Okay,
but like I don't think that I think the actors are going to record in like a studio booth, and like the puppeteers are going to like try to mimic the acting.
Ooh, okay,
which is like, I don't know. Those Muppet people are crazy to like how they're able to like make like, you know, the Muppets look like they're like actually talking and like and stuff. Right. Next one. DC was a no-show, at least in terms of their cinematic universe. They did confirm that Young Justice season 4 is happening, which I'm excited about because Young Justice is great. It was kind of surprising to me that DC was a no-show, considering that it's like, for the first time ever, I'm getting excited about DC movies.
So when you say no-show, it's just like information revealing their cinematic universe. Like, they showed up for like all the other stuff, right? Or are they like, were they just completely because like this is Comic Con,
yeah,
and it's DC, like
it seems like the cinematic, like the movies didn't show up. So like Warner Brothers didn't send a contingency. So like the CW sent like the Arrowverse people.
Sure.
And then like the DC like Beyond stuff people were there, I guess. But like there was no like Gal Gadot, and there was no like James Gunn talking about Suicide Squad 2 or anything like that. Which is I don't know. Like I'm excited for Wonder Woman 2, and like Suicide Squad 2 has like a fun director now. Like I don't know. I was getting excited and they didn't show up. Like I was actually saying to my friend, I can't wait to see the Wonder Woman trailer, and then a Wonder Woman trailer never came. Like
that is kind of a bummer. I mean, I feel like I mean, I know like you're getting excited about all the new stuff, but like, man, did they get fucking dunked on like earlier on with or at least like when they were directly trying to compete with, you know, Marvel and stuff like that. I felt like they were trying to emulate that process, but like as a DC thing instead of kind of trying their own unique spin, and that didn't work super well because it's kind of hard to beat the, you know, the audience capturing Marvel cinematic like style. I mean, you know like, what I mean?
At best, it's going to look like a pale comparison.
Yeah.
And at worst, it's going to be what we got. Like,
yeah, that's true. So yeah, I mean, I could see why they maybe took a breather on their cinematic stuff, just because like if they're smart, they've already probably rethought how they're gonna do like their cinematic universe, like doing short fun stories that like don't necessarily have to like add up to anything, or just like really interesting takes on certain characters would be cool, like what they're doing with what is it, the new
that Joker movie?
That Joker movie. Like that seems
around on. Like I'm getting more excited about it.
Yeah, like that seems really fun to like get like an you know a different spin on the Joker because he's such a, you know, kind of an enigma, a crazy enigma, but not Edward Enigma.
No, but he would be a great villain. Think about it, DC. And then next is Marvel, which, man, I wish I knew how to quit them. Like,
man, so I saw Spider-Man. That was another thing. I really enjoyed it. I was worried that I was gonna like be like, ugh, all right, I'm burnt. Like, I don't need any more. But no, it was so good, and like Mysterio was done so perfectly. Like, everything that like I could remember, because like Spider-Man was at least the cartoons were my jam growing up. So like I'm pretty familiar with like all the weird like, you know, Spider-Man characters, at least visually. I might not remember their names because that was like what, a bajillion years ago for me. But yeah, like Mysterio, like he was this, and I like that they put him in like his backstory in a very MCU way, where like
for sure.
I feel like his comic book version of him is kind of like, really, like that would not, I feel like that wouldn't hold up to you know, the audience of the MCU is like, I'm a failed actor. But like,
he kind of ended up being a failed actor, which was great.
True. Like that is what happened. But I also just love the fact that like at this point, we're starting to see like the Tony Stark has created the, you know, the next set of villains for the next, like I actually like, weirdly enough, I was worried that I was going to be like bombarded and kind of exhausted of them talking about, you know, Iron Man, because like the big, you know, end game shenanigans. And it actually was done in such a way that like it didn't feel like it was trying to continually beat me over the head with it.
Yeah. Well, and I think it explored the concept of like legacy really interesting.
Oh too. Yeah, absolutely.
Like, you know, like without, you know, getting into spoilers, like it took some turns I did not expect it to take regarding talking about other characters and things like that. But yeah. So like the Marvel panel, for as far as I'm concerned, could have just been like Kevin Feige and like the Russo brothers sitting with like cool shades and just like listening to applause for an hour. And like people would have been like, perfect panel. But don't know, they came prepared, baby. Some things coming up for Disney Plus. We got Falcon and Winter Soldier, where they fight Zemo, but not Baron Zemo, because that dude has a cool cape. There's going to be a Loki TV show where Loki goes on time adventures.
Great.
There's a weird one called WandaVision, where Scarlet Witch creates like an alternate dimension where the Vision is still alive. And I guess it's supposed to like initially feel kind of like sitcom-y, but like it starts to get really dark, which sounds like really weird. And I kind of want to see that one. Like that's the one I'm weirdly most excited about.
Yeah. So my hot take on at least the stuff that you just presented.
Yeah.
I have literally zero interest in Loki.
Oh, interesting.
Like zero. I don't like. I get it. Like who's the guy that
Tom
played?
Hiddleston.
I know that. Yeah, Tom Hiddleston. Like he's a good actor. He's like he's got that like weird hot thing going on. And like so I get it, but like holy shit, the Loki like. Like I can't like so what Doctor Who but the Doctor's an asshole like.
Wait, doesn't that sound fun though?
Yeah, and I'm sure it'll be entertaining for like I'll probably if I go down the route of buying the Disney streaming service, which I don't think I'm quite sold yet.
Yeah.
I don't think there's enough there where I'm like, you know what? That's going to make me spend the X amount of money for it, but I might watch a little bit of Loki just to see how it goes, but like I feel like it's gonna be a not good Doctor Who.
We'll see. They're doing an animated show called What If, which is based on like a long running popular comic series, which explores such things as like, what if Captain America was born in Germany, or like, what if like Tony Stark had, not decided to sign the Sokovia Accords, things like that. That will feature original voice actors and original actors. And then they did announce a couple of movies as well. They're doing a Blade movie starring Mahershala Ali.
That sounds amazing.
I know, right? Like, the coolest dude ever, and now he's playing Blade, which is awesome. They're doing Shang-Chi and the Ten Rings. This is going to be Marvel's first Asian superhero, and it's being directed by like an Asian director, and from the looks of it, it's an almost 100% Asian cast. But it's also an Asian comic book that was like developed in like the 60s and 70s. So,
whoops. So basically, you're telling me a more authentic Iron Fist?
Yeah, pretty much.
Ugh. Wow.
And then finally, the one I'm most excited about is Thor: Love and Thunder. Have you heard anything about this, Cody?
Yeah, I've heard a lot about this, and I
feel like we're gonna have radically different takes.
No,
okay.
So I really enjoyed the last Thor movie, so like I'm definitely gonna give this one a shot. Thor Ragnarok was awesome, and if it's in that same spunk, if you will, of like that like really like kind of off the wall, crazy's not the right word I'm looking for, but like just like that really like
camp.
Yeah, kind of campy, out of this world feel. Like if it continues with the way Ragnarok is, I'm sure it's going to be great. And I know, is this a rumor or is this confirmed that not only is Natalie Portman going to be in it, but like there's going to be some role reversal going on?
She's going to be Thor, baby.
Which sounds really cool, and I'm excited to see where that goes.
Yeah, it's actually comic accurate. So
yeah, because I've been low key keeping up on like big plot points for Marvel, and like that was a really I heard it didn't do so well from like the internet. I don't know how accurate that information is, but
slightly biased.
Yeah, slightly. That's understatement of the century.
Oh, they also announced that they're going to do a Fantastic Four movie. Probably X-Men. So
okay, I'm not.
Yeah, but Cody.
I mean, X-Men. Sure, I've seen them do a good X-Men movie, but is it really going to take them 3 times to finally bury Fantastic Four in the ground?
I think that if they do it right, it's going to be awesome. And
oh yeah, absolutely. I think it's a great concept. Like, there's a great setup there for an amazing movie, but for some reason, there's the curse of the Fantastic Four, where if you're a writer or a producer who touches this particular concept, you immediately like corrode and dissolve into nothing, and then the movie turns to dirt.
So here's my kind of take on that, which is, I feel like that's because like these people were serving the interests of Fox as a studio, right?
Right.
These Marvel people, like the MCU people, like a lot of them do come from a comics background. Okay. And so they're not as afraid to make it weird and campy and silly.
Yeah.
Whereas, like, I'm assuming, like, if you're like a bigwig working at like Fox and you like, comic books are those things that kids read, or like my son Jimmy reads it, but it's like no one's gonna want to see like, oh, that sounds silly, like you gotta make it cooler or whatever.
Yeah, you gotta make it edgy. Someone's gotta die.
Yeah, like I feel like the MCU will allow whoever is working on Fantastic Four to like make it weird and fun and a little campy, and I think that's the reason why those movies work in general. But
yeah, for sure, I'm excited.
All right, so that's my San Diego Comic-Con thoughts.
Damn,
that was a long intro.
Looking at the timestamp now, holy shit, we're almost at the middle section. So
don't worry, I'll make this next section brief.
All right.
So this season I'm talking about science fiction and kind of how it is a like lens into not only so in some cases it's interesting to see how science fiction predicts things that happen in the future, like technology, or like last week or 2 weeks ago, Jesus, like the moon launch. This week we're going to talk a little bit about science fiction reflecting its own time period. And so we are going to be talking about the novel 1984.
Yeah.
Now 1984 is a dystopian thriller written by George Orwell. 1984 was written during the 40s and was completed in late 1948. What? But it was published in 1949, so like it would have been cool if it was published in 48 because it's like 84 but backwards.
That would have been fun.
Yeah, right. But yeah, it's a dystopian novel that is set in the far off future year of 1984.
It's so far in the future, I wouldn't know what to expect.
So yeah, 1984 follows a pretty much average guy by the name of Winston Smith. Winston Smith is a member of the Party, which is an unnamed it is a party that is sometimes referred to as Ingsoc, INZSOC. I've never heard it pronounced, and I think that every time people do it, they pronounce it in a couple of different ways. And now Ingsoc and the Party control a country called Oceania, which consists of North America, South America, the bottom half of Africa, Australia, and Great Britain. And they are fighting another fictional nation that is called Eurasia, which is like Europe and most of Russia. There is a third faction that is called Eastasia, which looks like it's China, parts of India, and Japan. And then anything that I didn't mention is undisputed territory. So Winston Smith is a member of the Party, and he's working in a place called the Ministry of Truth, where he is rewriting historical records. So basically, like, a new story will come in and it will tell him how to correct it to match up with whatever the party said that week. So, like, an example of this is, like, last week, the government said that we need to create 100 more cars, because by making 100 more cars, we will, like, enhance our economy. And then the week after that, they're saying that there are no cars and that no one needs cars. And it reaches a point where not even Winston Smith remembers what's real anymore. Yeah. So they're constantly rewriting history to match the interest of the party, which is ruled by a person named Big Brother. Now, this is where these are, like, some of the big terms that come out of this. So you have things like Big Brother is watching you. Big Brother and Oceania are fighting another organization that is sometimes referred to as the Brotherhood, which is led by a man named Emmanuel Goldstein, who was a basically member of the party who realizes that the party was evil and corrupt and breaks away and finds a alternate party and a sort of underground brotherhood. And every day at like 2:00, everyone goes through what's called the 2 minutes of hate, where they play a speech by Big Brother and a speech by Emmanuel Goldstein, and you're supposed to, like, lash out with enough anger and rage that, like, people start literally becoming like animals, as is described in the book. Now, there's two other things. There are banners everywhere that say Big Brother is watching you, as well as telescreens that kind of monitor your mood, your talking, your behavior, but you can also watch, like, TV on it. So it's nice, right?
Yeah, that sounds really dope. I really love the idea of, like a TV on my... Wait a minute. I have a smartphone that does that.
I know, right? And it's listening to everything you say.
You know, wouldn't be shocked. Wouldn't be shocked at all.
And then basically the big thing that happens in the book is that Smith finds the book that was written by Emmanuel Goldstein called The Theory and Practice of Oligarchical Collectivism, which is basically suggesting that after World War II, the powers that be realized that it was much easier to control people if there were basically, like, fighting in a constant war with one another. So basically, like, everything is written through proxy wars. And the other sort of big implication is that Big Brother and Goldstein don't exist at all. Rather, they're just, like, made up figureheads to keep one another at war. So you have a big, strong leader who is sort of like a father figure who is watching over you and protecting you. And then you have a weak, sniveling person that Big Brother is fighting against. Now, basically, this book was written, like I said, in the late 40s, and was talking about sort of the rise of fascism and totalitarianism that was going through Europe. In fact, Orwell believed that there was a good chance that British democracy wasn't going to be able to survive World War II. And he figured that one of two things was going to happen, which is that there was either going to be a socialist revolution that was led by the proletariat, or there was going to be a sort of fascist coup d'etat. And that he realized that, war and revolution are kind of inseparable. But the reason I wanted to talk a little bit about this is this has become a really famous book that I feel not a lot of people have actually read. I don't know if you would agree with me on this.
So we were having a discussion about this before the podcast because, again, I didn't want to sound like an idiot because I've read a couple of what you would call reading, like, questionable children books, at least from when I went to school, because, like, that was, like, a huge thing, was, like, if you read, like, books about racism or, any politically charged issue or anything that's, like, going on, like, those were, like, hot topic books that you couldn't read in school. And then for some reason our school was like, nah, dog, You can read all the fun ones, and
Yeah.
so I was trying to remember which of these I read, if it was this or Brave New World, and I read Brave New World and not this one. So yeah, I I would say it's safe to say that this is probably, at least for me, a book that I never read, but like I know the references almost
Yeah.
immediately now, just from like, Big Brother is like, any of everyone at this point knows what that means.
Yeah. Big Brother's kind of become a stand-in for like a police state, or a state of constant observation. Another thing that he establishes through this is something called Newspeak, which is basically one of the tools of the party, is that every single day, or rather over time, they have started to limit what words can be said, right? So like over time, there are some governmental bodies. So for instance, like the Ministry of Truth is responsible for creating lies. The Ministry of Love is responsible for like war and they monitor sort of like political dissidents. The Ministry of Plenty is controlling ration and food and goods and things like that. So it's one of these ideas where it's limiting what words even mean, so you can't even necessarily think of complaining because there's no words to complain. Things like that. And then the other big one is that this ultimately ends, spoiler alert for a very old book, with the protagonist getting tortured to show how malleable the human brain is. So like one of the things that the ultimately enemy of the book wants him to admit is that 2 + 2 = 5. Because if he can admit that 2 + 2 = 5, then you can convince him to believe anything. Even though your brain knows that 2 + 2 is 4, with enough pressure and enough pushing and enough torture and enough, horrible things done to a person, you can physically break someone's reality to fit to their will.
And that's what we call pretty fucked up.
Yeah, it's a very difficult read. Right around the 2016 election, not to get political or topical or anything like that, I read 1984 and The Handmaid's Tale back to back, and then I had to like take like a huge shower because like boy howdy, that was a rough couple of weeks reading those two books.
Yeah, that's pretty heavy material to read back to back. Woof.
Yeah, but I mean, so 1984 I think is what a lot of people point to as a good example of a person using speculative fiction to write about what they observe in their own time. So, during, 1948, we start seeing a rise of totalitarianism in places like the Soviet Union. You also see kind of like rising things like you start seeing increased espionage going on during, World War II and then during the Cold War. Like I said, these wars that were fought in 1984 were proxy wars, wars that were fought on behalf of this country, but in other places. And it's one of those things that this was Orwell writing about what he was seeing around him, but making it feel fictionalized so that, it's a cautionary tale in a lot of ways. This is the extreme of what were the seeds he was seeing planted in his own world. Which I know is kind of a bummer, but I wanted to talk a little bit about it because 1984 is a pretty important book. I think more people should read it before they start bandying it about as like talking points. But it's an interesting read and one I would highly recommend. So, any questions?
I don't really have any questions, but I did have a comment.
Yeah, go for it.
The backdrop of this is very reminiscent and similar to what happens in the Metal Gear Solid series. In Metal Gear Solid 4, Guns of the Patriots, we're either in the distant future or like right about now, and basically all information is controlled, and the economy is completely tanked except for war economy, because they've built basically proxy war zones that are literally just there to have wars so people can build more guns and stuff. And it's interesting because, like, as you were saying it, I'm like, man, this sounds just like the backdrop of Metal Gear Solid 4, and like, you know, and like that, and the whole thing is the spoilers, or mild, or, well, heavy spoilers, but I'll keep them brief. But like, sure. Metal Gear Solid 2 and forward in that timeline is basically like information control being like the deadliest weapon against humanity, and just like, you know, eventually it's revealed that like the government, or at least the quote-unquote United States government in this game, is actually really controlled by artificial intelligence that is basically telling them what to say and what to do, and like the AI is also telling the you know, the news, the TV stations what to produce and all that stuff. And it's a pretty wild ride, and it's quite possibly one of my favorite stories, and it's a really good spy drama. So
yeah, and I mean, I think, like, you know, the whole power of information is really important, and I think that's it's no mistake that Orwell has a character whose job it is to change literally what history is, and it reaches a point where the character himself isn't even aware what is real anymore, because he is like, I think it's like at one point he realizes that he has changed the same story so many times that he doesn't even know what the original story was anymore.
Damn.
Yeah, it's a chilling read, but I think, you know, Orwell was seeing things that were kind of starting to happen, and in many ways it's a cautionary tale with things, a loose sci-fi backdrop. So yeah. But on that fun note, it's probably time that we go into the
middle section.
Welcome to the late middle section.
Yes, the very late middle section.
It's cool. This one will go long. Like,
yeah.
Whatever.
These are my favorite.
Welcome to the middle section, where we talk to you guys about our social medias.
That's it. That was the word you said.
So we are on the tweetars.
Yeah.
And by that I mean Twitter. At a Twitter handle, which is
Fandom R_podcast.
So yeah, if you want to tweet at us your thoughts about San Diego Comic-Con, or anything else we talk about, or anything nerdy that you see that we think we might get a kick out of, because, like, let's put it this way, we're kind of fans of everything. Please send us a tweet, a funny link. We've been tweeting some fun images and things like that. You know, say hi, and we'll have a question later in the show, I'm sure.
Yeah.
Now, if you want to send us a longer, lengthier thoughts about our show, ask us maybe some questions that we can address, talk about why you understand why, you know, DC bailed on Comic-Con. You want to send us a longer email, you can send that email to
fanroulettepodcast@gmail.com.
Yeah. So that's where you can send us lengthier things. But if you want to send us an email, but you don't want us to have your email, so we don't send it to, like, Russia, sell it to Russia, not send it. We gotta get that money. Just kidding, FBI.
God.
What's a way that you can send us an email without giving us your email, Cody?
Well, you know what you can do? You can go to our lovely website at www.fandomroulette.com, where you can get our episodes, and you get a little short bio of us, and, you know, just general news of what's going on. But at the bottom, next to the social media links, there's a little area, a little form you can fill out. All you need is, like, a internet handle, like, you know, I enjoy cookies 420, or you know, what have you. And
did you just hear that knock on your door, Cody?
This is the police.
Because it's a Snoop cop. Dogg?
Oh.
We got him, boys. He admitted it.
What? I admitted that I enjoy cookies.
420.
On April 20th.
Oh, damn it. All right, everyone go back to your cars.
But yeah, you can go there to the bottom of our website and you know, just your internet handle and like what you want to talk about. And yeah, that's a way you can get to us without having to use your email.
Sure. Now, I'm sure you have plenty of platforms. Or do we have plenty of platforms for which people can listen to the podcast?
Yes. We're on iTunes and Google Play and SoundCloud and Spotify. And each day we're working on adding ourselves to the rest of them, and you know, including RSS feeds and things like that. So you definitely search for us on Fandom Roulette.
We will find you. And what other social medias are we on?
We're on Facebook. We're on Instagram.
Yeah.
We're on Tumblr.
Yep.
And
is that it?
GeoCities.
Yeah, Angel Fire.
Yeah, I've got a teen heartthrob blog that I write.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
What is it? Which one is it?
It's the
Is it Cheetah Beat?
Yes, that's it. You got me.
I love Cheetah Beat. I really liked the article you posted recently about the kid from oh man, this joke would have worked better if I remember the kid from Boy Meets World's name.
Oh shit. Yeah, I know what you're talking about. Fuck. You blew it.
Well, anyway, that's the middle section. Knock knock. Oh,
who's there?
You just hey, who is it? Wow, it's me, Luigi. That doesn't sound anything like Luigi.
No, he kind of sounds like this.
I have a little bit of a summer cold. Sure,
that changes I understand, Luigi.
That changes people's voices a lot. He wants to know if he's writing down things now because I embarrassed him so.
Yeah, he's probably in tears right now. Look what you did. I can't believe you'd shame somebody like that on the podcast for everyone to see.
Yeah, now everyone knows that I'm the monster.
Well, I mean, if you look hard enough, you'll find that secretly deep down we are all monsters.
We're all monsters? Yeah.
Yeah, it was the monsters we became along the way.
Maybe He wants to know if you watched any comic book movies recently.
Comic book movies, no, but video game movies, right. Yes.
I mean video game you did. I mean, you did though. So you're now on the. You're on the right.
I'm also a fucking liar. So.
So anyway, what video game? Wow.
So
right,
in this
everyone,
section,
welcome to Fandom Roulette. It's a podcast where we talk about it here. So anyway, what video game movies have you been watching lately?
So this week I decided to watch Warcraft from 2016.
Can I interject with a little fun fact?
Yeah.
The director of Warcraft is David Bowie's son, and he also went to the same college that I went to.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, he also directed the very good movie Moon, which is a good movie. Now talk about the bad movie he did.
Okay, so the setup for this, Warcraft, the movie that came out in 2016, it's not super great, is based off of a very popular RTS/MMO.
Sure.
That was made over the course of forever.
Mm-hmm.
Warcraft came out, the first Warcraft Orcs vs. Humans, came out when I was a child. 1994!
Damn, really?
Yeah, like first computer level shit.
Whoa.
So this game has been around forever and has a like Tolkien list of lore and shit to deal with. There are books, there are literal timeline books that Blizzard has made to better understand the Warcraft universe, because it's mostly been told through, stories and games, and not like, it's huge. It's gigantic.
Sure.
Great setup for a good movie.
Mm-hmm.
It's not a good movie. Damn. So, I'll try to be brief, but my problems with this movie are as follows.
Hey man, it's a long one. Go as long as you want, my dude.
It's true. So first and foremost, the story that they decided to pick is the most overwritten story that everybody has already done 1,000,000 times over. It's the orcs versus humans plot of the initial first base game, in which orcs from another planet teleport using awful evil magics to come and take over the human race.
Okay.
It's so boring and overdone. It's awful. It's not a good movie. Like, that's not a good setup. Like, that was a good setup before Lord of the Rings came out.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know, maybe if this was made forever ago, I'd have different thoughts on it.
Mm-hmm.
Second awful bit, and I think this is kind of like the linchpin of it, like the reason why all this is like super bad. The movie tries to jam a lot of information into your gullet at the speed of light.
Fun.
Scenes never linger on anything dramatic or important. It's just like information. Take all of it. Like, there are two characters in the movie, and they just kind of like, so there's, and granted, this is all based on WoW lore, so like, for people who played Warcraft or World of Warcraft, like, you're gonna recognize these people, and you're gonna be like, oh yeah, that's really cool, for like a hot second. But like, they never explain any of the relationships. They never get into any of the backstory on these characters. It's just kind of like, oh yeah, Medivh's the guardian of the planet. And it's like, that sounds dope. How'd he get there? We're not going there. And just like, that's like the rest of the movie. They're telling you a story that doesn't matter when there are plenty of other stories that are way cooler.
That's a shame.
Yeah. And I think part of the problem, and why it feels like this movie is just trying to jam information, is like, it relies so heavily on its viewers knowing Warcraft lore that they don't explain anything, and they just want you to assume it. But the problem with that is this is kind of a retelling of orcs versus humans. So none of, like, the information that we have in our brain is not the same as in the movie. And as soon as you see that first, like, glaring issue, then you're like, well, wait, now I don't know what's going on, because they don't explain anything. But then the movies don't, like, follow the games at all, but they rely on the games to be interesting. So, like, there's a huge, like, flaw in their logic.
Mm-hmm.
And here's the other thing. This movie has a very Infinity War style ending.
Okay.
Or, I'm sorry. No, that was right. Infinity War was the first of the two.
Yep.
Endgame was, yeah, okay. But it doesn't have that same build-up.
Okay. I can see how that's frustrating.
Yeah, so the humans lose. The orcs at best are delayed for a hot second. And the cool orcs who are like, man, we probably shouldn't be using this evil death magic, all get murdered, basically.
Cowards.
And there's like this dramatic scene where the king of the humans is like, I have this crazy idea. There's this half orc that is kind of the intermediate between the orcs and the humans for a hot second.
Okay.
And her name is Garona. She's pretty big in the lore, and she does this in the games, but for different reasons. But basically, the king is convinced that if Garona kills him, she will basically become like a high member of orc society because it's based on like kills and like being like a bloodthirsty warrior. And if you kill a person who is like equally strong or equally influential, like you're all of a sudden like tough shit.
Okay.
So the king is like, nah, like I need you to kill me so that you can develop a better relationship between the orcs and the humans. Like this, like, which a little weird.
Yeah, a little bit.
It's a bit of a Mulder leap, but you know, I'll give him some. But then that all gets ruined because there's a human who shows up later, Lothar, and he's kind of like the quote unquote main male character in the movie.
Okay.
And he shows up to like try to save the king because he's like his brother-in-law.
Okay.
And then he finds his corpse and he finds Garona's dagger that she was given by the queen in his neck. And like then he leaves and Garona never has time to explain like what happened or, you know, no one, like he's just mad because, you know, his king is dead. Rightfully so. So like this whole movie is just like, let me just take a shit on you. Like all the good orcs die. The human like and this gambit, this whole like getting and fighting the orcs was like this big gambit to save humans that have been captured because they were going to use them on the gate to bring more orcs. Because then there's like the chilling realization that these orcs that are fucking everybody up are just a small war band compared to the rest of the orc empire.
Oh, jeez.
So then they're like, oh, we gotta shut this whole gate situation down. Fuck that. And so like, there's this cool buildup, but it's like not nearly enough to justify like everything going to shit.
Okay.
Especially when you're not sure if there's gonna be a second movie.
Yeah, for sure.
Like, if this was me, I would have ended the first movie on the big reveal that this gate is going to bring in, like, you know, 100 times more orcs than what they've been dealing with.
Yeah, for sure.
And then have the second one be that dramatic, like, they shut the gate, but at a huge cost kind of a thing. Meanwhile, all this is happening. There's a fledgling wizard that got kicked out, or that basically abandoned wizard school, named Khadgar, and he's like a huge important character in the World of Warcraft in the more recent games.
Okay.
So everyone was like, "Oh, awesome! Like he's going to be a huge part of this," and he's kind of this like the movies kind of portray him like this like dork that everybody hates, and like not even like for a legitimate reason other than like, oh, he left the wizard school. And so everyone's just like, oh, god damn it, Khadgar, you suck. Like the whole movie, even though he's like a fucking like dope ass wizard, like shooting spells out of his hands and whatnot. And he ends up like, there's this whole thing where of course, spoilers, the guardian of humanity, Medivh, is been corrupted by fell magic, and he's the reason that the orcs are even here in the first place.
Oh no.
Yeah, so Khadgar and Lothar have to like fucking like stop him because he's helping them open up the gate, and you know, like there's all this shit, and it's just like it's so fast. It's so quick. And you learn nothing, and there's no payoff. There's no nothing, because the end of the movie is just like, oh, cool. The guy who's using fell magic with the orcs is still very much alive. And like nothing is good. And so like, and this is like my quote unquote better idea is like, if they wanted it to be an epic story, kind of sure. like the Marvel universe, like they wanted multiple movies, they needed to dial it back and give people who aren't familiar with Warcraft more information. Like get a little deeper into like the different relationships, because they never explain half of them unless they're titles. So like you're like, Like when the person's like, oh, queen, it's like, okay, I know that's the queen of the humans, I guess. Or king. Like, that's it. Like, that's all the information you get. But, like, occasionally, Medivh, who's supposed to be this guardian, is like, he'll talk to Khadgar about how he's supposed to be the next guardian, but they never explain that.
Okay.
It's just a lot of, like, and especially because if you are familiar with the games, the timelines for all of these different settings and like characters don't add up. Like they're not in the right spot. So like you can't rely on your information to be like, oh, okay, I know what's going on. Regardless of if you're not a big Warcraft fan or if you are, you're confused because the movie does not do a good job at helping you with that. It's gorgeous movie. Those orcs look fucking dope as shit.
Okay.
But that's it. Like that's like the one good thing I have is like the movie looks good.
Mm-hmm.
I think what they should have done is there's a different tale. So this tale is very boring, the orcs versus humans like thing.
Mm-hmm.
And like it's so easy to just be like, yeah, orcs and humans hate each other. Fuck it,
sure.
Whatever. But there's this incredible story that they tell in Warcraft 3 of this holy paladin named Arthas, who goes on this epic quest to stop this undead scourge from taking over. And in the process of doing that, he hears about this ancient blade that'll kill anything, and it eventually corrupts him, and then he becomes the new undead scourge king.
Ooh.
That's a fucking cool story to tell.
That is.
Start there.
Like,
if you're going to do these little, like, vignettes of the Warcraft universe, do the good parts of the story. Like, there's cool characters. Like, there's this elf who gets banished and, like, becomes, like, a major character, but he's also, like, he basically consumes fel magic and is kind of doing that like riding light versus dark to stop the enemy kind of a thing. Like there are cool characters, but they don't talk about any of them.
Do you want to hear my idea?
Yes, anything would be better than what I watched.
you get Jack Black in there, and you go to Pandora, baby.
Oh, yes, love it.
Kung Fu Panda Warcraft.
There you go. Yeah, I just don't think they wanted to do things, and I think they just whiffed on the story, and like that's such a big part of these, like sure, it was cool to hear a lot of people's names that I recognize, but when you don't fully commit to the video game lore or the book lore,
sure, then
like what's the point? Like those are all just a bunch of names that like I don't have reference to anymore when I find out that like the city of Mages Dalaran shouldn't be floating up in the sky yet based on the timeline of this movie. It's it's just a hot mess.
Damn, that might be the nerdiest sentence you've ever said.
Yeah, you know what? It's true. And spoiler alert, I'm a huge fan of the Warcraft series. I played the World of Warcraft for years. Yeah. Years. There's a couple of characters that I'm like ashamed of how much time I've spent on them.
Don't be ashamed.
It's pretty bad, man.
Okay. Then be ashamed. I'm not your dad.
So yeah, that is the video game section. That is
Warcraft.
That is Warcraft.
Check it out.
Or don't. I mean, to be fair, you can get the HD rental from Amazon at the same price as the standard def, which is pretty funny.
That's telling. That's telling.
Okay.
All right.
So I know this is where we usually. Right? Well, I'm doing something new. I got a game for you, and I think this will be fun.
All right, I'm excited.
So, the game is called You and a Group of Adventurers.
Ooh.
So I've created a kind of single sentence campaign teaser
Got it.
based off of some nerdy media, whether it's TV, books, manga, games,
Sure.
etc.
Got it.
Your goal is to try to figure out what I'm basing this off of.
Oh, fun.
Yeah. And so we can switch off each week to try to figure it out.
Yeah.
So here's the first one.
Okay.
You and a group of adventurers realize the world isn't as it seems, and only you can stop the destruction of humanity.
Okay. Everything's not what it seems. Can I ask clarifying questions?
Yes.
Is it set in like our universe? Like, I mean,
yes?
so like, okay, what I mean by that is like, are the protagonists like humans, and like they're like living in like X year New York City, America?
Okay. Yes.
Okay. Are there aliens?
No.
Okay.
Yeah, I think we'll do the genie rules. You get three questions.
Sure. Are there children?
Not
Anymore?
Predominantly in this nerdy media, but yes, there are children.
Okay. Well, I was gonna guess Stranger Things, but
that, you know what? That's actually also a good answer. I think the other thing too is like if you find something that also lines up, yeah, that's really cool. That was fun.
Yeah. What was your answer?
My answer was The Matrix.
Ooh, yeah. All right.
Yeah,
I'm digging this.
Yeah, so we'll see how this plays out for a little bit, and if any of you out there want to give us some of you and a group of adventurers, hit us up on like via email or something, and maybe we can spotlight you on one of the episodes.
Spotlight.
Yeah.
All right. Now into our final section. We talking magic. Hey,
yeah.
Cody, was this your card?
No.
Damn it.
Got him. It was my card.
Damn it.
So this week on the magic section of D&D, we're talking about enchantment magic. Oh. Yeah, so this one's a really interesting one because I'm going to read you the description that I pulled from, I believe this is the SRD, the open source 5e version of enchantment magic, which reads: spells that affect the minds of others, influencing or controlling their behavior. Such spells can make enemies see the caster as a friend, force creatures to take a certain course of action, or even control another creature like a puppet.
Well, that's certainly fun.
Yeah, it's kind of starting to be reminiscent of the history section a little bit.
What?
Yeah.
Did we accidentally create a thematic episode? Oh.
So
yeah.
I have a question, or you know what? I'll save the question towards the end, but
sure.
But basically, these spells, at least in 5e, like there's a handful of them, and most of them are like command and friends, which basically like kind of force the target to do a certain action, which good or bad. There's also some other good ones. Like, did you know that bless is considered an enchantment?
That makes sense, but I did not know that bless is considered an enchantment.
Yeah, so there's a couple of like friendly ones, like Zone of Truth. I feel like is a ever so popular one, but is also not like necessarily inherently like evil sounding.
Yeah, I mean,
Because it's basically you have to tell the truth when you're in the zone.
In Code Thoughts, like similarly, it's you're more impacting yourself than others.
Yeah. And in Code Thoughts is a Guildmaster's Guide to Ravnica spell. But it is something worth mentioning because I have given it to my current party as like a cool little spy tool that they can use at their leisure.
But there's also one called Dominate Person.
Yeah, which basically reads on the tin what it does.
yeah, pretty much. Or antipathy and sympathy. Like,
okay.
Once again, another kind of messed up. Like, it creates the frightened condition on the person that you're casting it on. Yeah, this is one when we decided to do it. I was thinking of enchantments from Dragon Age.
Okay.
Have you played Dragon? You played Dragon Age, yeah?
Yeah. I'm not super familiar with it, but I've played it.
Like, enchantments were something that you could do. Like, I've always associated like enchantments in terms of things like you take a regular weapon and you put like some runes on it, and now it's like a slightly magic weapon or whatever, right? Like you're
right
laying in gems. So I thought when I said like, yeah, let's do enchantment, and then I was reading about this, I was like, oh, that's not what I thought it was at all. And I had some of those spells that you mentioned, Cody, as a cleric. But yeah,
right, and that.
Oh, go on. Yeah.
Well, so one of and here's probably one of the more interesting / fucked up spells in this school that that like kind of takes a moment to realize like what this is actually doing. It's Geis, which is basically you charm a target and give it like it doesn't even specify what the instructions are or what the limit is, but just a simple set of instructions. And every time the person who is charmed tries to do anything to counter your instructions, they take psychic damage, and a lot of psychic damage. And the duration of this spell is 30 days.
Yeah.
It's fucked. I mean, granted, there are ways to like dispel it and remove it, but like, damn, imagine a high-level bad wizard who gets a hold of this fucking spell. Woof.
Or, casting it on like what's the word I'm looking for? Like a low-level, like barkeep or something.
Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah, someone who would definitely fail to save and would definitely not like would not risk taking psychic damage to, to not do what it's doing. Yeah, there's so many like bad guys that you can create out of this. And there's a rant that I would like to go on, but I think it's adjacent to enchantment magic. I don't think it's necessarily like right on par.
Sure.
But there's this thing that we all it's thrown around a lot on the internet when talking about role-playing games, and it's called player agency. And it's the concept of removing control from the players who are playing your game in a in a tabletop role-playing game. And it's usually like, as soon as it even gets brought up, it's one of those like immediately like, no, don't do it, it's terrible, you're a monster. And this is basically the enchantment magic school. Is just like, here, I'm going to cast a spell on the party. I'm also taking your agency away by doing it. So like,
yeah.
So this is one of those schools where like, if you see one of these, I've said it before and I'll say it again, like, be wary of using these things a lot.
Yeah.
because this can be very adversarial in ways. But there's another rant that I want to go on about, like, there is a reason there are mind control spells like this in the game.
Yeah.
But for another time, probably when we talk about player agency and just that general concept in general. But I wanted to pose I guess it would be a philosophical question to you.
Sure.
Is it ethical, or is there an ethical way to use enchantment magic?
Yeah, this was something I was thinking about as I was thinking about this week as well. I'm gonna say no. Okay. Okay. So I will say this. Something I feel like a through line in a lot of these enchantment spells is that, like, the person eventually will remember. Right?
There are some, but not all.
Not all, but, like, especially some of the lower level spells. Like, if you use Charm Person, like, after an hour, they know that you charmed them.
Right? Yeah, and the cantrip Friends also does that too. Is like you are aware that something happened.
And so, like, you know, in our current campaign, we are, at least at the moment, and presumably going forward, we're spending quite a lot of time in one place.
Yep.
We are, you know, you gotta be really careful with using enchantment spells if you're not planning on getting far away from the person you enchanted.
True.
Because if they find you, there might be some serious consequences to your actions of, enchanting them or doing magic on them, things like that. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Not to suggest that if you're, like, a band of murder hobos, like, enchant away, but there's a better chance that it's not going to come back and bite you in the butt. I will say, though, like, I was thinking of one of my actually initial guesses for your party of travelers was Men in Black.
Okay.
And one of the things about Men in Black is, they have the flashy thing, and Jay is very insistent that he give the victims good memories.
Right.
And so, hey, maybe, like, if you're using enchantment magic to, like, make a person happier or, like, cheer them up, like, if there's no, even if there, if there's no personal impact, I suppose is the question or answer word I'm looking for, right? Like, you're just doing it to be a nice person. Who knows? Maybe, but it always feels a little sketchy. And if I could say a real quick side tangent thing.
Yeah.
So when I was in college, I played Knights of the Old Republic or KOTOR for the first time. And, like, what's, like, the one thing, like, even if you... so there's a couple things that if you don't know anything about Star Wars, you know a couple of things, right?
Yeah.
You know lightsabers, you know Darth Vader. And a lot of people know, like, the Jedi mind trick.
Yeah.
So when you do that in Knights of the Old Republic, you gain dark side points. It was, like, the first instance of, like, a moral choice system.
Right.
And, as a kid, I was in college, but, like, as I was like, that's stupid. Why am I getting dark side points? And my friend pointed out, I was like, you're hijacking their mind, basically, to get them to do what you want. And I was like, oh, that's really messed up if you think about it. I think that's kind of a through line with all of these enchantment spells. Like,
yeah,
you're hijacking another person, basically. You're showing how malleable the human mind can be. And it might prevent you from getting into a combat encounter, but, like, that's still pretty dark. So
yeah.
What are your thoughts on the question?
This was tough. Like, even today, while I was like, I thought I knew the answer, and, like, my answer is no, but there's obviously exceptions to this rule.
Sure.
Because there's some things like bless. like you're doing that for right intentions, and the only like there's not really a downside because it has to be a willing creature. As if I'm remembering the rules right, there are some spells in the enchantment school that are not like inherently like dickish.
Yeah.
And I think there are like ethical ways to use enchantment magic, like and this is a wild situation, but using command or suggestion or one of those spells to stop someone from committing suicide.
Yeah.
You know? I mean, it's dark, and that's not the game that I play.
Yeah.
Typically, but I think in that case it's okay. But that again, that's such a hard question because there's so many of these spells that are like Geist, for example. Like I could never really see myself using or finding a way to use that in a ethical way.
Yeah.
And command, like again, like, yeah, for the most part, like what you're doing is dickish, but like there's always that like argument of the greater good and stuff like that, and like, but this is a good question because we're talking about the ethics of enchantment magic. What does, like, if you're doing a custom world, like they're also having that same conversation, like
Sure.
unless it's like pretty much devoid of magic, like most wizards know that these spells exist.
Yeah.
So like do your wizards think it, because like necromancy is like that like classic like this is bad, quote unquote, like this is just inherently bad, people who use it are just waiting to become liches, blah blah blah.
Sure.
But but the same thing, at least in like the verbiage of Dungeons and Dragons 5th edition, sure, they might say that the spells affect the minds of others, but they never inherently say like right off the bat like this is evil, this is bad.
Yeah.
So like maybe when it comes to your world building ethics, like I would like in my current campaign with your group, Holtherim, the biggest city in this land, they would probably not care. Mm-hmm. They probably would be like, as long as you're doing it for the right reasons, like enchantment magic is fine.
I can see that.
But also my campaign's got a little bit of that Big Brother vibe. So
everyone's watching someone.
Yeah, there's like, everything's kind of connected in a certain way. So like in my world, yeah, ethically, enchantment magic's fine as long as, you are approved to cast magic in this area and, various and other like qualifications. Like, cause like magic isn't just something people can just do willy-nilly. Mm-hmm. They have to, they basically have to get licenses and stuff like that, or be in specific positions of the government. Like if you're law enforcement, like you just automatically have, like if you can cast spells, like, yeah, you can cast them whenever you want. It's like, it's like having a weapon on you or whatever.
Sure.
So
yeah, it's an interesting
So
question.
It depends, because like it could be that much like necromancy, enchantment magic is off the table for your wizards. That could be like, I wouldn't be surprised. Like there's this concept that's sort of starting to form in my brain of a world where like magic is heavily restricted.
Yeah.
And it's like, illusion spells, enchantment, necromancy, like all that shit's off the table because it's like, they find that it's like, oh, well, it's so easy to just turn dark side because of it. We can't use it. And that could be then those could be interesting lore, like halt on those schools of magic could be interesting because like, your character might not see it that way, or, maybe there's this good wizard who relies heavily on illusions to help people or whatever. And like, that can be interesting dilemmas. So yeah, I thought it'd be interesting. But yeah, my short answer, no, but obviously there are some exceptions to the rule.
Sure.
Much like everything else.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, sure, obviously. But yeah, I think it's an interesting question to move forward with. When you mentioned illusion magic, I mean, hey, what's like the difference between that's tricking a person outside of their brain?
Exactly. Like, you're just manipulating their sense. You're, instead of manipulating their mind, you're manipulating their senses. Like, you're making them think something's there when it's not.
Like a Mysterio.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
And we all tie back in.
Yeah. But yeah, I think that's an interesting question, and one that I'm going to be thinking about going forward in our D&D campaign.
Yup.
Yeah. Shall we wrap her up?
You bet.
All right, thank you guys so much for listening to another episode of Fandom Roulette. Please go back to the middle section to learn a little bit about our social media. Give us a follow, rate, review, and subscribe if your podcast listener does those things. Move us up that ladder. Tell a friend. Pass it along. All that wonderful stuff.
Yeah.
Thank you once again for listening. This is Joe.
And I'm Cody.
And as always, stay nerdy.
Stay super nerdy.